Okay, we'll get started, everyone. I think some people are going to be joining on, but just mindful of time. So I'm Emma and this is Meg, and we're from Great Minds Together, and we're working on the Autism Peer Education project with Andy as well. It's Andy's Q&A today. So there are a few topics that we are able to touch on, but if anybody wants to ask Andy any specific questions to get us going, we're more than happy to go straight into the Q&A.
But hi everyone, I'm Andy. I'm a founder of Spectrum Gaming. I am also autistic, as well as running a community for young people. And yeah, I guess that's feel free to any questions about anything autism related, and I'm more than happy to answer them.
So we was having a chat over the last couple of days, weren't we, Andy, just about looking at ways in which we can make this project the best it could possibly be, in regards to educating professionals, particularly around families, and helping them increase our understanding on how to prevent escalation of mental health needs. A lot of the time that happens as a result of unmet needs.
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of talk around how you maybe envisage this project developing and how we can really make a difference in regards to the autism education programme.
Yeah, I think it's quite a few things, but I think one big thing that's come from parents I've spoken to so far, I'd love to hear everyone's perspectives, is I think lots of systems and sort of ways things work can be incredibly difficult to navigate. I think often there's the national law and the way things should work, but then that's often completely different to how things are in practice. Like, for example, in addition to being autistic, I used to be an education advice volunteer for a national charity. And so I used to know the SEND code of practice word for word off by heart. And it's quite interesting knowing exactly what the guidance states and what people are entitled to. But then in practice, how many local authorities and areas deviate from that and have their own unlawful rules and policies. And that's just the EHCP process. And there's lots of different sort of things that people should be entitled to and support people can get. But then the systems can be very, very difficult to navigate. So I think having a way to sort of simplify things and make it easier to understand would be quite helpful.
And I think also that maybe along the lines of recognising who needs to have the information around SEND code of practice, because actually that isn't widely shared with every professional that comes into contact with a family, and it's interesting that it's kind of who determines who has that training and understanding. And a lot of the time schools don't get that training, teacher staff don't get that training, local authority staff on the ground don't get that training and understanding. So I think it's about spreading that far and wide as much as we can independently, to see that everybody needs to be aware of these responsibilities and expectations of professionals. So you've talked a little bit on your video just around your mental health, and I think a lot of the parents specifically that have been joining the peer support groups have been asking for support on how to support their children or young people with mental health, especially at the moment because we're in the middle of obviously lockdown 3, which has impacted everybody so much more than any of the others before. What would you say that they need to be looking for, and what they need to be doing in regards to supporting people with
I think one of the first things I've noticed from talking to young people at the moment is a lot of people, I talked about it when I did the other video, but often people see sort of traits of sort of anxiety and depression and other things as part of autism. So there's, when things aren't going well or things like that, people learn to blame autism for it, but it's really important to realize that isn't actually the case. And you feel the traits of anxiety, depression and more as a result of sort of negative experiences and struggles that you're going through. And I think the first step for me is helping young people to distinguish between what is autism and what isn't. And once you've done that, that's when you can start to look at what can help. I think the key message I always say is what's autistic young people need exactly the same as other people. So you need to be to connect with other people and have a community where you feel like you belong and get on well with the people around you. You need to be to keep learning, and you need to be to have some goals or a motivation or a passion, and know that people believe in you to be able to achieve that goal. And you are taking steps to do that. It's also about, just rather than focusing on fixing negative traits, about embracing positive ones and promoting feelings of well-being. I think what seems to usually happen is someone gets sort of mental health support from CAMHS or a different service, and it's focused on sort of reducing mental health needs, when actually, if you're focused on promoting well-being and happiness and connectiveness, then that automatically sort of mitigates all the negative emotions and feelings you experience anyway. But that doesn't normally seem to be a focus, which I think is really important. So
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's about understanding that, it's about working forwards rather than getting to a crisis point and working backwards. So how we can support before it gets there. We've had a question in, Andy. So
yeah.
currently my son has diagnosed autism. He is 6 years old. Is he eligible for gaming?
Yeah. If you mean to join Spectrum Gaming, yes, Spectrum Gaming is open age. The way it works at the moment is, if someone's under 13, we have a Facebook group called Spectrum Gaming, and there's two different things which we do. One is we run events every week. We can do a live stream, or we do other events as well. So in the events section, there's descriptions of how to join each event. We also have a Minecraft server, which at the minute is PC only, but it's going to be cross-platform in the next few weeks. So any person of any age can join that. We'll put a registration form once it's fully set up. And the final thing is, if your child is looking for other people to connect with and play with, you can just put a post in the group saying how old he is, what games he likes, and if other parents want to connect, so just write a comment and you can connect that way as well.
So if, for instance, you've got young people who don't want to engage with Facebook because it's, very recognised by some young people as an old person's platform, so I'm told by my children. So how would you engage children through Spectrum Gaming if they don't access the Facebook group? Is it through the gaming itself and just sharing IDs of the games and profiles?
So if the Facebook group's only for parents of children under 13, because if you're under 13, you're technically not allowed to have an account on the social media platforms. For young people aged 13 and above, we use something called Discord, which is a social media platform, a completely different one. But I think it's just the perfect thing that, I love it and the young people love it as well. So the way it works is you make your own private community, which has different channels and sections to talk about people. So our server has a general chat for just talking about general stuff. We have a chat for memes, a chat for talking about autism, all that sort of stuff. But then it also has voice chats as well. So you can, rather than arranging a time to meet, you can just come and go as you see. And if someone else sees you in voice chat, they can go as well. You can have your video on, you can share your screen. So yeah, I think Discord's brilliant. And we don't use Facebook for young people aged 13 plus. We use Discord because that's just, I think it's brilliant. And then if people want to play a game together, either they're on PC so they can play together through Discord, or they chat on Discord, and once they decide in the game to play together, they just share each other's usernames and then go over to the other games console and play that way as well. So yeah.
If there's a young person, a child or young person who's not diagnosed autistic, that doesn't rule them out, does it, in terms of being part of that community?
No, so our criteria for Spectrum Gaming is either you have an autism diagnosis, you're on the waiting list for an assessment, or you only really feel comfortable or at home in a community of autistic people. I think often there's a really long waiting list for a diagnosis a lot of the time. And the other thing as well is, I've done training for services about autism and talking about myths and misconceptions, and there's some really interesting statements that people make. And for example, autistic people can't have eye contact because people don't want friendships, and I find it quite frustrating how diagnosticians still believe all these myths and false things about autism. So we wanted to make sure we don't have barriers to people finding a community where they can feel comfortable to be themselves. It's quite interesting. There's young people who've sort of joined before they've been diagnosed, they've got the diagnosis, and then rather than having their sort of being left with overwhelming feelings because it's all hit at once, they're already connected to a group of autistic people, and rather than people giving normal messages, they get congratulated in Spectrum Gaming on a diagnosis, and it's seen as like a positive experience, which I think is quite cool.
It is. And I think as well, you touched on there, language is quite important, isn't it? And we have some parents that we work with that are going through this experience for the first time, and they kind of don't understand any of that. So explain to us a little bit for parents who are just entering into this new world, really, for them, what the
Yeah.
difference is between person first and identity first language and why that's important?
Yeah, I think first you have to go back to the sort of diagnostic process itself, where it ev- autism as a whole is initially seen as a problem or a negative thing. So you look for difficulties in communication, interaction, restricted and repetitive behaviours, and all this sort of stuff. So it's always seen as something that's negative, and it's sort of pathologized, and it's seen through the medical model as something to fix and treat and cure. But then if you look at the long-term outcomes of autistic people who receive the diagnosis, people who are focused on fixing autism or curing it and that sort of thing, or reducing their symptoms, are the people who are really isolated or depressed, or who have suicidal thoughts and feelings, and all that sort of thing. But the people who have the most sort of positive feelings of well-being and feel like life is going well for them, they're the people who have learned to switch from sort of seeing autism as something to fix to sort of accepting it and seeing, I'm stuck with it whether you like it or not, and just embracing both your strengths and your differences as a result, rather than focus on trying to fix it or get rid of it and all of this stuff, which is impossible, by the way, because autism is the name for how your brain is wired. And I think this is also reflected by the language people use subconsciously, even if people don't realize it. So if you often, when I talk to people about what language they use, people say, I prefer to use person with autism because we need to remember they're a person first that just happens to have autism. And my first comment is always, why do you need to be reminded that we're people? Why can't you just see that anyway? And the other thing as well is, even when people have the best intentions, when people say that, it feels like you're saying it's great you're a person, but you've also got this negative baggage that's stuck with you called autism that you need to fix or get rid of. And whereas if you say if you refer to yourself as autistic, I think that's a better terminology to use, because it shows, autism isn't just a part of you, it plays a role in literally every single thing that you do. Like I said, whether you like it or not. So you're not a person with autism, you are an autistic person. And I've talked about this before, but I think it's also important to think about this sort of emotional weight that the language has for people, because it's, for me, the language used describes how accepting you are towards your diagnosis. There's been lots of surveys of autistic people, and when people who use person with autism tend to be less accepting and positive about their diagnosis, whereas people who tend to use autistic person tend to have more positive feelings of well-being, because they've switched from the sort of medicalized model to learning to sort of accept their differences, which I think is really important for everyone. I think it's understandable when people prefer to say person with autism, because I think when you get an autism diagnosis, both for the young person and the parent, it's a big learning curve and everything has to change. I think sometimes for parents, they have their perspective of how they want life to be and their aspirations for themselves and their children. And when someone gets an autism diagnosis and you realize you have to live a different life, a lot of people can struggle with that adjustment. And there's a story that I love called Welcome to Holland, which is it's a story about a parent who dreams of going on holiday to Italy, and they pack all their bags and they buy all of these maps and guides about what we're going to do when we get there and this sort of stuff. But then they have an autistic child, so they have to change their plans a little bit. And when they get off the plane, we're not in Italy, we're actually in Holland. And in their brain, they're thinking about how much they really wanted to go to Italy and how much they despise not being able to go there and going on all those fancy rivers and getting pizza and all that sort of stuff. And while they're busy thinking about how much they're missing Italy, they are forgetting about that Holland is also a really amazing, beautiful country, and there's lots of amazing things there which you don't get in Italy. So I always say, when you're autistic, you have to live a different life to the norm. But once you learn about how to live your life in a different way, it can easily become a really happy one. It's just important to be able to make that adjustment and get in support with it when you need it. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think, to take away from that about the difference between the person first and identity first is that, person first language, person with autism is as if you have something, like you were saying, whereas identity first is very much about being autistic and embracing that and embracing the positives of that. And yeah, they're all really amazing points. We've got a couple more questions, Andy. So we've got Lois said, totally agree that autistic people often have to end up at some kind of crisis point before they get assistance from a health or educational perspective. My son is fairly new to Spectrum Gaming. He is already making connections with people who he shares passions with. That's really great. Razia says, Andy, can you share something about you? My son is recently diagnosed, as I told. Sorry to say that I'm really sad and thought what's going to happen with his life. Very relevant to what you just talked about, actually, Andy. But he's improving a lot. When I seen your video and you told us that you also have autism, I was surprised. Your speaking is very much motivating. Can you share a bit about your autism journey? Just curious to know about you for being inspired. So very inspired by you, basically.
Thank you. I think one second. I think one important thing to remember as well is autism is different for every single human being, and it affects everyone differently. But I'll tell you a bit about. I wasn't actually diagnosed until I was an adult, but obviously I've been autistic since I was born. So when I was younger, I was hyperlexic, so I struggled quite a lot with sort of social skills and that sort of stuff. But then I could also read way earlier than most people typically do. So I think my mum said the first time I saw a book, I could read it. Hyperlexia is quite common in some autistic people as well. And then when I was at school, I was known as what's called a masker. So I used to sort of, when I was in primary school, I was more sort of in my own world and sort of doing my own thing. So I used to spend my time pretending to be animals and going into the fantasy world and that sort of stuff. But then when I went into high school, I think there's a lot more sort of social expectations on people, I was more of a masker, so I spent lots of time sort of analysing people and looking how they spoke to each other and then trying to replicate them and be like them. So that's like those stupid things, like if someone makes a joke, I would learn when to laugh even if I didn't understand the joke, and knowing how to respond to different people saying hello and all of these things that you have to learn, that's just really hard work and exhausting. But yeah, that's just that's how it worked for me personally. But for other people it's different. So I was a masker, so I could hide most of my differences even though I was really struggling. There's other people who aren't able to mask, and you can visibly see that they're autistic, if that makes sense, and people have more open sort of meltdowns and stress related behaviors and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's different for everyone. But yeah,
I think as well it's really good to point out that there's you've done an amazing video. So Razia, if you go onto the autismpeer.education website, there's a video that Andy's done and it's phenomenal, and it really goes into a lot of detail. There's a visual on there with talking about lots of different perspectives and aspects, and it's worth going on having a look on there. It's the first video you come to, so hopefully that'll help as well. We've got another question. So my son too has just joined Spectrum Gaming and is loving the Minecraft server. He's hoping to get more people on the server. Is there any chance you can maybe do a stream or something to promote, as he thinks it's great?
Yeah, I think one thing, I made an announcement in the group, but the Minecraft server is being reset in the next few weeks, so we can add more features. So we're going to make it cross-platform, and we're also adding a creative and a survival mode. The reason there's not many people playing at the moment is because people are waiting for the reset, but people have big plans for when it is. So someone's going to make a Pokemon Kingdom, well I am. Someone else is going to make a Fortnite Kingdom, and people are making plans for when it resets, and everyone's looking forward to that. When it resets, we are also going to live stream the Minecraft server twice a week as well, to look at everyone's creations and that sort of thing. So it will be much more active once it's reset. Right. We have 250 members on the server, so yeah, it's more likely than not it'll be quite active.
Amazing. And we've had Ruth says, my Joe also hyperlexic and very heavy masker. It takes a big toll on his mental health. I am quite worried about year 7. How did you navigate secondary school?
Yeah, I think for me, I really struggled during my school day. So I spent most of my time sort of just avoiding people when I could. So I spent lots of time in the school library, just reading books in the corner. But then obviously I was picked on and bullied quite a lot as well. So when that didn't work out for me, I always went back to that same group who, like I said, I wasn't really friends with them, but I did sort of sit and spend time with them anyway, just to sort of escape and watch and just be there, if that makes sense. Yeah, I know, but if I could give a tip about secondary school, mine would be to just try your best to go out of your comfort zone to try and meet new people. And as difficult as that sounds, I'll it's really difficult to sort of go through the discomfort to talk to someone and try and build a friendship for the first time. But you're not the only person in your school who's a masker or who's autistic or who's struggling with things. But the only way to sort of meet new people and work that out is by going out of your comfort zone to start to approach and interact with new people. And I think it's sort of, I guess the way it works is you can try and start a conversation with someone or something like that. If it doesn't work and you don't speak to each other again, then there's no harm done because you wasn't speaking to them to begin with. But then if you do start to build a friendship or something like that, I think that's really, really important, really useful. And for me, I think the one thing that's more important than anything else for getting through any negative experiences is having friendship and people you can go to for support. Because otherwise it's just you stuck with all of your negative thoughts, and it's easy to get into a negative downward spiral. So yeah.
Do you think it would be positive for linking in with school as a parent to see if school can help form some positive peer relationships? Because they'll have like an overview, won't they, of other pupils that may be also having similar struggles. That would be really good to link, like you were saying. There are probably other students having the same worries in school. Do you think it would be positive to link with the professionals to try and sort of orchestrate that, or do you think it needs to be something that needs to organically evolve?
I think it depends on how it's done, because I think what typically happens is people say, oh, these children are autistic, let's group them all together in a group. But friendships don't work that way. Because I think first of all, you need to sort of break the ice and make people comfortable talking about it. But a lot of people unfortunately are quite ashamed or embarrassed of their diagnosis and don't feel comfortable talking about it. The other thing as well is people aren't going to make friends just because they have the same diagnosis. The most important thing is people's shared interests and passions and that sort of stuff. So if you focus things, for me, other people might not agree. This is just my personal opinion, but I think the best approach is starting up more groups and social activities around individual interests, but they don't have to be specifically for autistic people, for an example. But you have the support in place to make it work for that young person. For example, in my area, we run an inclusive youth club, and we call it inclusive because it's a group that anyone can access and it's open to anyone. But we have a traffic light system for social interaction. We have a quiet room and another extra area for in case things get too much. So it's for everyone, but it has the support for when it's needed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good advice there, Andy. We've got some more questions. I'm mindful of time, so we'll do the ones that we've got here now, and everyone can hopefully be covered. So I totally agree, Lois says, and quite often some of the difficulties that autistic people experience are exacerbated or even caused by the environment they find themselves in. Totally agree with that, Lois. The way that most mainstream secondary schools are set up these days is sensory hell, which is exactly right. How would they cope with sensory needs in mainstream school when they're really struggling?
I think there's two things. I think one is having that sort of sensory regulation as much as possible is really, really important to stop yourself from going into sort of a meltdown mode or anxiety skyrocketing and making it even more overwhelming. So there's lots of little things that can help. What, for example, if you have sort of any deep pressure or heavy muscle work, that activates your sort of proprioceptive system as an organizing effect. So things like having a weighted backpack to move between lessons or having a stretchy band that you can pull, and all that sort of stuff has an organizing effect that helps you feel as comfortable as possible. The other thing as well is, well, I've made a document that I'll share in the Autism Peer Education group. So me and some young people made something called I forgot what it's called, Indoor Inclusive Toolkit. It's got a name, something similar to that. And what we did was, we wrote a list of harmful sensory experiences that happen in indoor settings. I made a list of solutions or adaptations that can be used to make indoor environments as sensory friendly as possible. And that's a free document for anyone to download and look at. So I'll put it in the files section of a group after this Q&A. And yeah, feel free to take a look at that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we've got email addresses for every school in the country. So I think that's definitely something that we'll be sharing with as many mainstream schools as possible, because again, it's not necessarily the fault of the professionals in schools either. And I just want to point that out, because one thing that we've come across is that the education around special educational needs, disabilities, autism, sensory needs just isn't there at degree level for teachers at all. And they do less than 5% education around any of those things. Some just one lecture. Social workers don't have any training on SEND at all. So that's something that we're really trying to change, and a big point of the Autism Peer Education programme, because it does make a difference when people have that knowledge and understanding, definitely. Natasha says, I totally agree on the masker hitting crisis and only then getting noticed. We are at the stage where my son crashed after 4 weeks of secondary and hasn't had any secondary education. There is a big gap in the education system for children who are academically able but can access the environment, but allows that label of being academically able had only been detrimental to him, as people view him as a child who can do anything, especially within masking. That's really common, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah, I have also, it sounds quite bad, but I've come up with a term that I call sort of the limbo children, and it's where people are able to follow a mainstream curriculum, but your needs aren't being met in a mainstream school, and it is really, really common, and it's awkward because you're stuck in between the two, being able to follow the mainstream work and having high attainment, but then your mental health needs not necessarily getting met in that school, but then also not meeting the criteria for a specialist placement. So it just leaves you in the area where you're just left to sort of struggle, which is really, really frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, Lois has just shared, just from the question that we had earlier, clubs at high school can be a good starting point for forming relationships in high school where you share common interests like chess club, Minecraft club. I was thinking that actually when you were speaking earlier. Thank you from Ruth and Joe. And exactly, his academic ability was held against him when we were trying to access support. And I think that's something that we need to take away as, you know, adults. We're responsible for building on that education of professionals and helping them understand it, and not expecting them all to be aware or having ever been trained in any of this. So, you know, sharing knowledge that, you know, parents and carers are the expert in their child. And I think it's really important that, you know, we change that culture of professionals where, you know, yes, we can do degrees and we can, you know, have lots of different training on teaching and things like that. But when it comes to a unique individual, the people who are experts in that person is their parents, and everybody is completely different. And even, you know, I've heard it said before, oh, it's okay, I've done a course on autism, I know all about it. No, if you've done a course on autism, you know a generalized view of this situation, but you don't know that unique individual. And coming across, you know, one person with autism, you have experience in, or not one autistic person, should I say, you have experience in, you know, one autistic person, because everybody is individual.
Yeah, I think the most important thing isn't necessarily understanding a lot about autism. It's about the sort of approach or perspective you go with supporting a young person. I think rather than saying, you know, this is autism, so this is the support we'll put in place, I think a better alternative is working with the person and working together to sort of investigate and problem solve to work out what works for the individual. I think even if you come up with the exact same solutions as your autism knowledge helps you get to, the fact that you're working in equal partnership helps the young person a lot more in that situation. Like there's many times when I've seen young people who have a sort of a quiet room or a safe space to go to, and the school says this is your safe space, but when people don't use it, but when there's the exact same situation where teachers have met with a young person and said, we've agreed sometimes you get a bit overwhelmed at times, what can help, what do you think about having a safe space, and then they agree to it, and because it's done in partnership, it's much easier for the person to access that space.
And also what that space is and where that space is, because actually telling somebody where their safe space is isn't then a safe space. You know, where is the safe space for that person, and what do they feel more comfortable with? You know, somebody who might feel really comfortable and safe in an enclosed room, another person might prefer to be outdoors with lots of space, with lots of greenery to sort of, you know, be able to walk off how they're feeling and their emotions. So it can be, somebody might prefer to just walk around the corridors and be amongst people. It's different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's I think, we could talk all day to you, Andy. You've just got so much to give and so inspirational. A number of people say it all the time. And I think, I'm really looking forward to doing more and more of these sessions. If anybody has any more questions and you haven't had a chance to have any of your questions answered today, then just send them over through one of the peer groups. Andy's on there and very busy on there as well, but we will be doing other Q&A sessions like this, and I think we've had hundreds of questions actually on those peer educator sites for you specifically, Andy, so very mindful of your well-being. So we'll collate them all and we'll kind of build them into these sessions, and we'll hopefully get everything covered for everybody. And just thank you so much for your time, because I know how precious it is and how many people you help, so thank you.
Thanks for having me. Always happy to chat.
Yeah,
As I was saying in my Facebook group as well, I thought it would be a good idea to sort of have on Facebook groups, we have a sort of Facebook rooms feature, where it's sort of similar to Zoom, where people can sort of dip in and out and just chat and ask each other questions and give advice and stuff. So I thought maybe it'd be good to maybe try doing once a week Facebook rooms and see if people want to come on and just chat about different things.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
Really good idea. We'll get it launched, and just keep your eyes on the website and the groups. What's going on? Anybody that wants to get involved, contribute, share information that's relevant, that you need sharing far and wide, that's what we're here for, and that's what this is all about, and increasing that knowledge and awareness for everybody that may not have as much knowledge and awareness as we have. So just let us all know. All right, thank you, Andy. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you, and you too. Nice to see everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.